I wonder why you've chosen to watch these talks today. I mean, Good Friday isn't the easiest day. In a normal year, when we're able to hold church services, Good Friday isn't one of the most popular days to come to church. I think, in choosing to do something special to mark Good Friday, you've made a good decision, but we should acknowledge that Good Friday is a day that forces us to look at the darker side of life and the darker side of human nature. And we know that when we do that, we worry that we may feel a bit gloomy, become a bit anxious, even feel a bit depressed. In one church I worked at, the vicar offered that between us we would preach on all the hardest questions the congregation could throw at us, and he brought in a shoebox, put it at the back of the church, and people could write their questions and put them in the box. And one man wrote the question, "Why is the language in church so gloomy? All this talk about miserable offenders." And I think that does capture the challenge very beautifully and also point us away to the solution. Because as C.S. Lewis famously pointed out, in the language of the prayer book, which the man was quoting, miserable offenders, the word miserable means to be pitied, to be shown mercy. And mercy, thank God, is what he shows us. And that isn't a depressing thought at all. But it is a thought that requires us to be realistic about ourselves, that we do need God's mercy, because all of us, me, you, even the holiest of saints, fall short of perfection every day. My first image of the crucifixion at St. Cross is in the central panel of the west window. Here the artist picks up these themes through the story in Genesis 2 of the origins of our human condition. Adam and Eve have a choice. They can be innocent of the knowledge of good and evil and live in paradise with God as God wished, or they can use their freedom to go against God's command, gain knowledge of good and evil, and then have the permanent need to face the choice between them. So our human condition is to know good from evil, but not always to choose the good. And God sees all of this. He knows that our choices are not perfect, our relationships are not perfect, our parish is not perfect, even the vicar is not perfect. And what Christianity says is, God made all of this and he has redeemed all of it. Previous generations talked of sin as a plague and God's redeeming love as the cure for it. Listening to talk of plagues for most of my life has been a distant metaphor, something from medieval or ancient times. Well, it doesn't seem distant this year. Now, we feel urged to pray that God will save us, our families, our community, and our nation from the coronavirus. And perhaps that helps us see how we also need God's help to save us from spiritual plagues, to break the cycles of anger and revenge and wrongdoing, of abuse of power, of broken relationships. The plague of serpents pictured in the west window above Adam and Eve is only stopped when the people confess their wrongdoing, when their prayers are offered to God, and when Moses puts on a pole a substitute for what had plagued them. And that's why we see Jesus, our incarnate God, lifted up on the cross and put to death, symbolically and publicly. That's why he becomes sin who was without sin. As Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, Jesus predicted, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, divinely above all our human struggles, as the window artist places him, yet also struggling more deeply than anyone else pictured in the west window. John chapter 3 goes on, "This is the judgment, that the light has come into the world,
and people loved darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. When we are at our worst, we love darkness, not light. That's why we are miserabilis, miserable to be pitied, to be shown mercy. And mercy, thank God, is what is shown us by him. Not only mercy from above, but mercy in among us as Jesus suffers and dies for us.
God in pity saw man fallen, shamed and sunk in misery. When he fell on death by tasting the fruit of the forbidden tree, then another tree was chosen, which the world from death should free. Therefore, when the appointed fullness of the holy time was come, he was sent to make all things forth from God's eternal home. Thus he came to earth incarnate, offspring of a maiden's womb. 30 years among us dwelling, now at length is fulfilled. Born for this he meets his passion, for that this he freely willed. On the cross the Lamb is lifted, where his life blood shall be spilled.